By now, you've probably decided God has called you to be a writer. But what type of writer? Full-time? Part-time? Hobbyist? It will be easier to decide once we explore how writing can be a viable career. Most writers I know write less because they want to make money and more because they want to write stories that will inspire, delight, encourage, and convict people. I know when I first started writing, I was okay with not making a dime so long as thousands of people read my book. Yet, here's the truth. A solid income is vital for reaching and impacting readers. Consider these three factors. Free books are cheap. They're easy to hoard and never read. After all, how many free books do you have on your Kindle that you've never read? If you want your readers to feel invested in your book to the point where they'll actually read it, it's best if they literally invest in it by paying for it. Also, money can buy you readers through advertising. The more money you make, the more you can advertise and the more people you can reach. Therefore, if your book really is worth your readers' time, the loving thing to do is earn a healthy income so you can have the budget to find and reach those readers. And finally, the best way to become an exceptional author is to write as much as you can and continually educate yourself. Top-notch writing education costs money, and if you want to write full-time, you'll need to earn a full-time income, so you don't starve. So we see that if you care about making an impact on the world, there is also reason to care about earning an income. Jesus spoke of this in Luke 16:9. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails they may receive you into eternal dwellings. God's kingdom is all that matters, but sometimes money is a part of serving the kingdom. I'm not saying you should write for money, but as you write from the heart, you should keep money in mind. This is an important mindset to consider because it can drastically affect every other area of your writing. Now we've established the nobility of being a full or part-time author, but there are two reasons you may think this doesn't apply to you. One, you only write as a hobby. And two, you love to be a full or part-time author, but you don't think it's realistic. To the first group, I say, excellent. Writing is a great hobby. But you never know when it might start to mean more to you, so pay attention. To the second group, hang on. This lesson is for you. I can't prove to you that you will personally be able to make it as an author, because that's impossible, but my goal is to show you that it's not completely crazy. If I can instill in you a can-do mindset, your chances of success will be much greater. Maybe you've heard some depressing statistics about how the average book only sells a few hundred copies. There are two faulty assumptions with taking this at face value. First, to my knowledge, no one organization has ever been able to track all book sales on all platforms. They always leave out some demographic. I've linked to an article below this video that gives an example with BookScan statistics, as well as covering other relevant information to this lesson. Book sales are normally at least a little more optimistic than you hear. Also, who says your book will be average? With the advent of the ebook, anybody can publish in minutes, so more books than usual are complete junk. The average numbers include a host of people who just finished a book and immediately hit the publish button. If you don't write complete junk and spend time editing your book before publishing, you're already ahead of the curve somewhat. Also, who says you have to wait on chance to sell your books? Authors who are good at marketing their books will sell many books, while authors who are bad at it or never try will continue to sell few books. Most novelists fall into the artist stereotype. They live to create art, but they have this irrational and violent fear of anything business related. In light of this, of course, novelists are known for being poor, but that's not because nobody buys books. It's because novelists don't treat their art like a business. In this lesson, I want to convince you to think of yourself just as much as a business person as you are an artist. I heard a great metaphor on this issue which I'll recycle. You may think your chances of becoming a successful author are the same as getting struck by lightning. Well, stop thinking in terms of chance. Scientists have actually figured out how to direct the path of lightning using lasers, so there goes your excuse. When you look at successful authors, they rarely got there by dumb luck. Chance is not the issue. The issue is how do you become a successful author? Theory aside for the moment, let's look at how some real authors make ends meet. As you'll see, there's a lot of different approaches. For starters, let's take Wayne Thomas Batson, a Christian author you might be familiar with. For his entire writing career, Batson has held a job as an English teacher to pay the bills. While he hasn't broken out and gone full-time yet, no one could say he's not a real author. Despite many other duties vying for his time, he's written upwards of 15 books and reached many readers. One of his books, The Door Within, was a best-selling novel with about 7,000 reviews on Goodreads at the time of this recording. I bet anyone listening to this would be thrilled to see those results. Another author you might know is Cam Weiland. She runs the wonderful blog helpingwritersbecomeauthors.org and writes both historical and speculative fiction. Despite publishing only one novel every 3 years, plus 5 non-fiction writing manuals she's published, she manages to make a full-time income. How does she do it? Unless she's secretly being funded by a rich uncle she isn't telling us about, it appears it's all through smart marketing. Another route fiction authors take to earn a living is to supplement their royalties by selling related products to their fan base. One author named August Birch wrote an article about how he does this and why he believes it's an important step all authors should take. One success story he pointed out that we can all look to is the Harry Potter franchise. Debatably, J.K. Rowling has made most of her money from products related to her books rather than from the books themselves. She's made hundreds of millions from licensing movies, stage plays, amusement parks, and all sorts of swag and trinkets. Now, you'll rightly note that J.K. Rowling is 1 in a million, but the model itself can work for all writers. You might not have a film company interested in adapting your book, but you can still build a mini franchise. Author S.D. Smith does this, and I'm reminded of it at least once a month whenever I run into a friend of mine wearing an epic t-shirt based on S.D. Smith's books. Artsy fans of yours can even be incorporated into your mini franchise if you can convince musicians or artists to produce art or music for you based off your story worlds, which you could then sell, giving them a commission. Also, you may not be able to build a theme park based on your story world, but say you write World War II novels, you could certainly organize your own historical tours based on events in your books. Your imagination is your limit. As a final example, take indie author H.M. Ward. According to an article from The Creative Pen, this prolific writer releases a romance novella every few weeks and has sold over 4 million books. Many other writers take this path, writing and publishing books as fast as possible, building their income on insatiable readers who eat books for breakfast, books for lunch, and books for dinner, and will come back to them for more and more and more. While this schedule is impossible for many, if not most writers, some can handle it and allegedly still churn out high-quality books. So if you're this type of writer who can churn out 20,000 words a week, this might actually work for you. The great thing is, it makes going full-time easier, since you don't have to build as large of an audience as some authors have to in order to sell a sufficient amount of books. I hope these examples have shown you that there are many ways to build a career as an author if you're willing to be creative and flexible. You can just as well be a real author that sells thousands of books and impacts people's lives by being extremely good at marketing your books like a pro, or as a mid-lister who has multiple revenue streams, or as an author working in between the gaps in your day job. Nobody should ever tell you that you can't be a real author, and you should never think that. But I know what you're thinking. How do I get there? Well, the simple answer would be that you have to convince people to buy your book, but marketing is a complex topic and too technical for our theme of mindset. Let's focus on the foundation, mindsets and principles that will guide you through the rough seas of authorship and set you up for success. As we dive into these principles, I hope they'll give you hope and something to aim for. Proverbs 17:22. A merry heart does good like medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. Principle number 1. Successful writers write a lot. According to an article titled What Makes a 100K Author, 8 Findings Every Author Should Know, which I highly recommend you read, authors who earn over $100,000 a year spend an average of 29.6 hours a week writing compared to only 19.8 hours among emerging authors earning less than $6,000 a year. Now, the last thing I want to do is place a burden on those who literally do not have the time to write. But if we're willing to take some risks in this area, most of us can actually find the time to write. In a recent video titled Achieving Your Dreams, my favorite YouTuber, Shad Brooks, talked about his journey from first dreaming of writing a novel to now, years later, releasing his debut epic. His full-time, well-paying job was leaving him with literally no time to write, so he went to human resources and asked for a part-time job, working 2 days less a week. He had to scrape by on a tight budget, but he eventually built up a massive following on YouTube and published the book of his dreams. The key for him was coming to this realization, and I quote, "If I spent my entire life working toward this dream, never having achieved it, and I died, I still would have lived a happier and more fulfilling life than if I had lived a life in a better job that made heaps of money that was stopping me from working toward my goal." Writing more means more books published, which has the added benefit that you can move from part to full-time. Having a big backlog can actually double the effectiveness of your marketing. See the 2 links below this video to sources on read-through rates if you'd like to study this for yourself. No one's saying writing will be easy, but it will be rewarding. The second principle successful writers abide by is to implant themselves in a community of other wonderful, skilled, and successful people. Jeff Goins takes considerable time unpacking this in his excellent book, seriously, go read it, Real Artists Don't Starve, where he gives several examples historically of how artists flourished in tight communities and locations where opportunity was ripe. One example he gave was Ernest Hemingway, who took the advice given to him to move to Paris because that was where all the interesting people lived. By doing so, he put himself in luck's way, so to speak, forming valuable connections with others in the industry and drinking in the artistic atmosphere. Goins argues that Hemingway might never have become the renowned author he is today without having moved to Paris. Here at Storyambers, we've seen this happen on a smaller scale with writers meeting on the forum and sharing tastes and opinions, finding critique partners, and forming support networks. When the time comes to publish, having a community will greatly increase your chances of success. As one example, I've linked to a case study below this video of how one group did a successful cross-promotion, where individual authors were selling 500-some copies of full-price books in a short period of time. Because they could tap into each other's audiences, they each had a much larger reach and thus a bigger paycheck. The third principle that successful writers follow is to look for ways to keep the rights to their creative work. If that doesn't sound highly controversial to you, let me put it in ordinary English. Successful authors do not generally go exclusively with a traditional publisher. Please notice the terms not generally and not exclusively. This is not to say that traditional publishers can't be fantastic or that you should never use them. The reason you should self-publish at least once is because of what statistics show. 3 surveys make this abundantly clear. First of all, in a survey done by Digital Book World and Writer's Digest, it was found that hybrid authors, that is, authors who publish some titles with a publisher and others independently, were significantly more likely to make a full-time income than those who solely publish traditional or solely independent. Now granted, this is somewhat old data dating back to 2014, but even now at the time of this recording in 2019, many authors find it worthwhile to go hybrid since both indie and traditional publishing have their advantages. For instance, traditional publishers can have connections that could land an author an interview with an important influencer. On the other hand, independent authors arguably have more options in how they can market their books. The second survey done by Written Word Media in 2017 showed that all of the authors they interviewed who earned over $100,000 a year were either self-published or hybrid authors, no solely traditionally published authors. Note that this survey seems to indicate that the chances of success between self-published and hybrid authors are roughly equal. More self-publishers numerically were making over $100,000, but hybrid authors had a slightly higher statistical success rate of earning over $100,000. Finally, in an extremely thorough survey done by Author Earnings during 2016, among novelists who had recently debuted, the overwhelming majority of those who are earning a full-time income were self-published. Keep in mind that for this survey, hybrid authors were categorized as either traditional or independent authors, depending on where most of their Amazon author earnings came from. So, from this survey, it is unclear whether hybrid authors or indie authors have a better chance of success. Why are independent and hybrid authors so much more likely to make a living? It's simple. You have to sell literally twice as many books as a traditionally published author to make ends meet. If you doubt this statement, see my calculations below. To make $50,000 a year completely off book sales, an indie author must sell roughly 12,500 books, while a traditionally published author must sell around 25,000 books. The moral is, owning the rights to your own novels can really pay. Naturally, there are some traditionally published authors who strike it rich, so keep that option open. But for the average writer, they'll want to go indie or hybrid. Whew! Well, we've definitely covered a lot here, haven't we? A long session for an important topic. It's hard to hold fast to your calling as a writer, find time to write, or push yourself to develop new skills if everyone around you is telling you you'll never be a writer, that you'll starve. But now you know that doesn't have to be true, because you've learned that 1. Success is not about luck, but skill, knowledge, and education. Some writers, even many who are not household names, can make a full-time income off just their books. But you don't have to gamble on that, because you can use your platform as a novelist to supplement your income with related products like t-shirts and music, or related services like writing coaching. Also, if you prefer the security of a day job, you can still have a great side career in writing. You've also learned that the more you write, the better your chances of success. You've learned that finding the right community, the right gatekeepers, the right mentor, and the right location can make all the difference in the world. It's like the parable of the sower. If you want to flourish, you need to find and plant yourself in the good soil. And last, you've learned that keeping the rights to your creative work, i.e. self-publishing or going hybrid, greatly increases your chances of success. So now, at last, we come to the end of our lesson. For your homework, I'd like you to answer these 2 questions. In light of this lesson, what are you going to believe differently and do differently? I hope this lesson has encouraged you that you can be a real writer. But you may have this nagging feeling that there's something we haven't covered, something you'll need to know if you want to become a professional author. Get ready, because in the next lesson, we'll be covering how to develop a business mindset as you begin to navigate the tropical jungle that is publishing and marketing. See you then.